The theory of multiple intelligences was put forth by Howard Gardner in his book Frame of Mind. This book took a new look at the way humans process, retrieve, and use information and developed new ways of thinking about the human capacity to learn and interact in the world. Gardner proposed the notion that human beings have not just one type of intelligence, but several. Previously, intelligence had been defined by measurable results on standardized tests. If you want to know more, just click here and you'll have the Howard Gardner link where you can learn more about these different types and go further into your understanding of it. It's important to understand and to know that personal choices, education, families, even religion will affect the way or stimulate the way we learn or what kind of intelligence will be developed. Gardner has identified 8 different intelligences, and here they are. An interesting type of intelligence is the logical mathematical intelligence. And I can tell you right now, this is not one of mine. This intelligence has the capacity to analyze problems logically, to investigate issues scientifically. These people like to organize things and work at breaking down a situation to its many different components. They are often very good at restating information in a very organized fashion, even when the original material was not highly organized.
The next type of intelligence is intrapersonal intelligence. People with this intelligence have an awareness of themselves. They understand themselves and their own hopes and fears and what makes themselves tick. Often prayer and meditation, these sort of introspective and reflective elements, are parts of worship that really connect with people with a strong intrapersonal intelligence. Interpersonal intelligence is the capacity to understand the intentions, motivations, and desires of other people, and consequently to work well with them. These people are often identified as people. They find it quite enjoyable to work with other people. They're often identified as good talkers and good listeners. This intelligence is quite important for a lot of youth.
There's musical intelligence. It is the skill in performance when playing music, in composition and appreciation of music and musical qualities. It is a little parallel to the linguistic intelligence that we will see later, but it's more than just a talent. This intelligence also includes a heightened response to intonation and rhythm in someone's voice. This can greatly impact the reception of a story or even a sermon. Another interesting style of intelligence is the visual spatial. It is the potential to recognize and manipulate the patterns of a wide space as well as patterns of a confined area. These people remember the way a room looks and feels, including color, design, and arrangement. Environment can play an important part in learning for people with a strong visual and spatial intelligence. There is the bodily and kinesthetic intelligence. It uses the body to solve problems and create products. Athletes, dancers, craftspersons, technical person, or mechanical profession are a great example of people that have bodily kinesthetic intelligence. Oftentimes, people with this kind of intelligence prefer to have someone show them the activity first. They will learn by watching the person and then doing them themselves. They like to use their hands for that. These people are also very perceptive about body language and physical relationship. And when it comes to church or religion and religious expression, they will like to participate in some worship in a more physical matter, maybe in dance, maybe by helping in a ritual. They will like that better. They will have a better connection with the spiritual realm when their body can participate in that.
The study of intelligences is quite interesting because as we get deeper into this study, we learn more about people and new intelligences sort of bubble to the top. One of the newer ones that's being suggested by the pedagogical societies is the naturalistic intelligence. And these people have a connection with the flora and fauna and the ability to identify and categorize nature. In young people, this is definitely identifiable by those kids who know every single name of every single dinosaur, and they very often develop into people with an interest in how life fits together, how the bigger picture of nature all works. Another of the newer intelligences is spiritual intelligence. These are people who are really connected with and interested in the cosmic things of life. This can be motivated by personal pain or a real appreciation of the aesthetic, or even just by living in a community in which the spiritual nature is promoted and dominant. One would think that all members of the faith community would have a strong spiritual intelligence, but this simply isn't true. One way that we see the spiritual intelligence manifest itself is through perhaps entering a holy order or wrestling with theological questions. We have given you just a taste of these different intelligences, and we would definitely encourage you to read further. There's a lot more information out there than time will allow for us to share with you today. But please remember, these intelligences are never limiting. Knowing what other intelligences exist gives you an opportunity to work on the ones that you're weaker on to make them stronger. Please don't ever see this as something that points out in the ways that you don't do well. Focus on the ways that you do well, on the intelligences that are strong for you. Build on them, share them. Everyone is intelligent in their own way.
Greg, how all these intelligence can help us in a church life or in our spiritual life, our community life?
Well, Marco, I think that very similar to some of the topics we've looked at in the past, knowing about multiple intelligences, knowing that different people learn and absorb information different ways, that different people have different strengths, knowing all those things makes it much more powerful when we get together in a group, when we interact as a faith community. Um, Now, I know that sounds like it's just an answer as far as these sort of collections, but our personal spiritual life can benefit as well, because if we look at these and start to self-identify and know which specifically intelligences are the ones that are strongest in us, that might actually give us opportunity to focus on the types of input, on the different ways that we learn, and make sure that we're focusing on both on our strengths and our weaknesses when we're personally developing our own spiritual life, building our own faith understanding. If we learn that we are people who learn or absorb or have smarts in the category of body or kinesthetic, then perhaps that explains why just sitting down and poring over the Bible isn't really connecting in the way that we'd like it to, and perhaps we need to find opportunities to learn that connect with the ways we can. Now, when I talk about weaknesses, I think also we need to remember that this is a very fluid thing, and whatever type of intelligence you currently connect with now, you can always grow other ones. And so then knowing if you've got a certain weakness, to spend some time to intentionally grow that intelligence might give you, just might change who you are a little bit, might shift your faith, shift your, even just the way you learn. so that the faith encounters that you're currently having might actually stick better.
In 1 Corinthians 12, Paul talks about all these different gifts. Would you say that these different types of intelligence are also gifts from God? And these intelligences can be used for the glory of God. What do you think about that?
Oh, yes, most certainly. That's exactly how I picture them. I think that our internal diversity and or the diversity between each one of us is one of those beautiful creative acts of God in us, in humanity. And as we read through the Bible, we see different characters who had different skill sets, and God used them in spectacular ways, and ways that they could never have imagined because of the skills they had. And so I think that's probably where Paul gets this description from of all these different gifts, of all these different talents. I think those things connect very strongly to what sort of modern scholastic understanding is. I love it when we encounter situations where modern science rediscovers situations that have been suggested for thousands of years. It's just, I love that we, in a post Enlightenment age, like to think that we need to put all this effort in to discover these things. And so we've got people now saying, oh, look, people have different ways of learning. Yet a couple of thousand years ago, Paul said, oh, look, different people have different gifts. I love how those things dovetail together. To me, it builds up the connection between scientific discovery and religious or faith understandings, and how those things tie together, from the historical details that we get through religious documents, tying right to modern scholarship. I really like how that all plays together. So that's kind of a long way around your question, but yes, I definitely see all these different gifts, all these different intelligence as gifts given to us by God, specifically so that we can explore them and learn them and use them for God's glory.
When we think about spiritual intelligence, which book of the Bible would you say that speaks the most to intelligence, spiritual intelligence?
Well, Marco, I'm going to have to give you three different answers to this question. Um, First off, I definitely look to the book of Proverbs for sort of common sense sort of items, for um, wisdom, for knowledge. Proverbs is definitely a place to find that. These little slices. I mean, each verse of Proverbs has all this weight to it, this strength, this wisdom. So that would be one answer. But then also, like, that might be more wisdom and less intelligence. The spiritual intelligence, my understanding is it talks about how people are getting deeper into understanding and maybe questioning some of the big sociological questions, psychological questions, that sort of thing. And to see writings that fall along that pattern would definitely be Ecclesiastes, where the teacher is looking at life and questioning why life works this way. Although lots of people have seen Ecclesiastes as fairly dark, saying that life is vain, it's wind, it's useless, that all of our efforts have no effect. I think if we can get beyond the words, we can see that there's a real beauty in recognizing where we need to put our strengths, where we need to put our efforts, what things we need to stay focused on as far as life is concerned. Because as the teacher says in Ecclesiastes, the things that we gain if we work hard for monetary wealth or for positions of power or for fame, these things are all gone when we're dead. These things all just go away. It's somebody else that benefits from them. So why would we spend all of our time and all of our energy focused on those things? Whereas life itself is something to stay focused on, and relationships are things to stay focused on. So for me, that is definitely a bit of a spiritual intelligence discussion. But then if we look to the New Testament, I definitely see the entire book of Romans as having some really powerful, deep discussions. I'll have to admit there are times when I read Romans and I just throw my hands up in despair and say, I don't understand what I just read. But then going back through it, you can definitely see Romans is this work that probes very deep into a bit into human history, a little bit into spiritual understanding, into the psychology of who we are and how we answer some of the big questions of our time. And I think for those reasons, we see that these books have a huge amount of relevance even today. Thousands of years after they were written, the questions that are asked are very relevant. So I'm going to have to trade it off between Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Romans. This discussion about multiple intelligences seems to have a whole lot more to do with human nature, human development. It feels like maybe it would fit better in a discussion around how people learn than in a religious format. So I wonder, Marco, if you can give us some idea of why it matters to religious organizations to even know how people learn. How does this fit?
Well, why does it matter? It matters because we all understand and we all have a relationship with God different. We all experience God differently. And understanding the type of intelligence we have matters because when we do understand that, we discover how to communicate with God, not only how we communicate, but how we feel God, how we understand God, how we get into relationship with God. Personally, I have to speak. And when I speak about God, I deepen my understanding of God. Other people will have to write or to read or to listen. And also multiple intelligences. We have the spiritual intelligence. So if we realize that this is a kind of intelligence we have, then our relationship with God can go deeper. At least our understanding of the spiritual realm will be broadened and go deeper. So I think it matters in that sense that understanding the type of intelligence we have or that we operate in can bring us into a path of understanding and learning as well. There's ways of learning that don't work for me, but because it doesn't match my intelligence, my type of intelligence, if you will, my style, and understanding that, then I can go into ways that I understand God better. And it's the same thing for everyone that is watching right now. If you understand your type of intelligence and how you learn and understand, then you can go into ways of learning and understanding God in your own realm, if you will. So that is why it matters.
Marco, would you have an example of a time when knowing and understanding multiple intelligences has helped you in ministry or in your own faith journey?
Well, what I can tell you is it was really an understanding for me, and I believe it is the same for other people. I realized, and it has to do with self-acceptance much more than it has to do with um, multiple intelligences, in the sense that I realized that I was gifted differently than other people, and I was always trying to be gifted just like them. I was trying, I was envying my neighbor, if you will. I was envying their gifts and their intelligence and their way of expressing it. And without even seeing my own type of intelligence and my own special gifts that were given to me for God for a special purpose. As you can tell by now, my gift is communication. My type of intelligence is the verbal intelligence. I also believe that I have uh, um, intrapersonal and interpersonal intelligence. And that is a special gift for me, not for everybody else. Maybe some people would envy that, just like I would envy other people. So in my faith journey, this is what I've discovered. It's self-acceptance of my own personal gift. I'm unique in that way. God has made me unique in that way. And envying somebody else's gifts is not bringing up my own gifts, my own call. Understanding your gifts is also understanding the call you have from God and answering it. God is not asking us to be just like our neighbor. He's asking us to be unique, right? So, in understanding my own intelligence and my own special gifts, I think I've been able to answer this call and understanding God's call into my life and putting that into fruition as opposed to try to be somebody else. I'll never be a good somebody else, and I'm not called to be somebody else. I'm called to be me, Marco, unique, uniquely gifted by God and a God that loves me and sends me into the world. So I believe it's the same for everybody else around me and everybody else that wants to answer a call. First, see what kind of intelligence you have and what kind of gifts you have and put that into the world.
Now, Marco, I think you and I share the belief that all humans are examples of God's creative force. So I wonder about all this discussion of diversity and multiple intelligences. What does that tell you about the nature of God?
Well, first, let me tell you a little about me. Um, I remember I was probably in 4th or 5th grade, and I was having this discussion with the teacher about intelligence. And I said, I believe I'm very intelligent, but I don't have the grades to show for it. And she said to me, there's many different ways of expressing intelligence. I've never been very academically gifted or intellectually gifted. I'm more of a intrapersonal kind of person, interpersonal person as well. I have spiritual intelligence, but when it comes to logic and philosophy and all that, like I'm totally lost. I cannot do it. And for a long time, I thought I'm not intelligent. Why, God, did you not make me intelligent like all the other? Why are my grades not better? I'm praying for you for this intelligence and I want to have intelligence. But God gave it to me. Not in the way I expected or I asked, but He gave it to me. He gave me an easiness to talk to people, to relate. He gave me charisma. God gave me all of this. So I am intelligent in my own right, in my own way. And I also do profit a lot out of other types of intelligence in my own life. Like I said, I'm not a philosopher or a logic kind of guy, but I love to read books about, like theology that go deep into abstract concept because it does enrich my own spirituality, where it is more of a practical spirituality, a day-to-day life spirituality. So I believe that what it says about God is that first, He has a really great sense of humor, and second, that He gifts everyone, but differently, and we all work together. Imagine a world where we would all have verbal intelligence. Everybody would be speaking, but no one would be listening, probably, or and so some are better at speaking, some are better at thinking, some are better at understanding human nature. So intelligence is like that, and of course we saw that intelligence is like, I think, about 8 or 9 different type of intelligence, but we all have a combination of them all, and differently. So what it says is that about God is that God is giving us all different gifts, but it's all for His glory. When we use our gifts and our intelligence, our personal intelligence, so please never think that because you don't have good grades that you're not intelligent. You have another type of intelligence. Um, Maybe you have a musical intelligence, and that's your gift. That's what you can give. So I think that's what it says about God, that we have to understand and take our own gifts and welcome other people's gifts as well, because they all work together. We all work together.
Multiple intelligences has certainly given us a lot to talk about and a lot to think about. Before we go, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. From what you know of Jesus, which intelligence do you think he would identify as being strongest for him personally? And secondly, what does multiple intelligence have to do with the way you understand your faith? Take those questions home with you. Contemplate them. We thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon on another episode of The Loquacious Lay Ministers.